Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. Let me start with the fact that it was indeed a rarefied pleasure to be interviewed by Al Jazeera's Mohammed Ado yesterday, whom I thank. We were speaking about the economy, the slowdown that we've been facing, and what would be the consequences of a further delay. And those consequences will be heavy indeed for a country such as ours to bear. Macro thoughts, US payroll changes. This is from Business, giving you an idea of what's been happening over a longer period of time. Home thoughts, it was a pleasure to wish farewell to the Australian High Commissioner, John Feeks. It's a pleasure to have known him, and quite an extraordinary person, and he's on his way to Fiji. I like this. Yahoo's first CEO is selling his house for $19.4 million, and it looked a rather lovely house too. Quite a view to wake up to. This is the Niagara Falls, Kimberley Hull. Looks amazing. Paulo Coelho says, intuition is really a sudden immersion of the soul into the universal current of life. I like this photograph. Happy 18th birthday, Elsa's Skopje. I've never been there, and I've been wanting to go there for quite a while. We live as we dream alone. Joseph Conrad in the Heart of Darkness. Facing it, always facing it. That's the way to get through. Face it. Do you see the story? Do you see anything? It seems to me that I'm trying to tell you a dream making, a vain attempt, because no relation of a dream can convey the dream sensation, that commingling of absurdity, surprise and bewilderment in a tremor of struggling revolt, that notion of being captured by the incredible, which is the very essence of dreams. This was a photograph issued by the Syrian Presidency on the occasion of Eid al-Adha. And then I like this photograph of a 106-year-old Armenian woman protecting her home with an AK-47. China's Communist Party will likely begin its much-anticipated Congress on October the 18th. State media said, officially starting the clock on the country's biggest political reshuffle since 2012. The 19th party's Congress's proposed start date was announced Thursday after a meeting of the party's Politburo, according to the official Xinhua news agency. While the schedule is technically a recommendation and requires approval from the broader Central Committee, that's usually a formality. The Politburo said the Congress came during a critical period of the development of socialism and Chinese characteristics, according to Xinhua. Week-long event will determine Xi's ability to implement policies such as overhauling the world's largest military or reducing China's $33 trillion debt pile. The pageantry begins with a speech by Xi detailing the party's policies for the next 5 years and ends with a curtain call by the new standing committee lineup. My piece last weekend was China Rising, and I was talking about a number of moves from the Gwadar port to the Sri Lankan port to Djibouti to One Belt, One Road. And I was saying when you take these moves together, it speaks to a material Chinese advance. The pivot to Asia, which was supposed to contain China, is dead in the water, and China has sprung that trap. And I also said Xi Jinping's One Belt, One Road program binds the world to Beijing because all the roads and railways have but one destination, and that is China. I'd like to thank Beatrice Marshall for having me on her Talk Africa program about the upcoming BRICS. US fifth-generation fighters, strategic bombers, conduct a show of force with allies in response to North Korea. That tweet was from Pacific Command. Joined exercises, South Korea and Japanese jets joined exercises with 2 supersonic US B-1B bombers above and near the Korean Peninsula on Thursday. I, for one, think that Kim Jong-un has called the West's bluff in this matter, and it's very difficult not to do a deal with him now. The current tense situation on the peninsula isn't a screenplay or a video game. This is China. It's real and is an immense and serious issue that directly involves the safety of people from both the north and the south of the peninsula, as well as peace and stability of the entire region. Iran is adhering to nuclear deal limits, the UN has said, despite Trump claim. IAEA says Iran's stockpiles of uranium in heavy water are below agreed limits as Trump threatens to withhold certification of Tehran's compliance. If they want to bring down the deal, they will, an IAEA official told Reuters, referring to the Trump administration. We just don't want to give them an excuse to. Pakistani court has acquitted 5 men but declared the former President Musharraf a fugitive in the Benazir Bhutto murder trial. I went back to the Daily Show. Why are people still listening to Donald Trump's words? And it's a 5-minute clip and it's really very, very good. International Market Society Generale said there is mounting evidence that underlying US CPI has already slid into outright deflation. This is according to SocGen, as Japan did 7 years ago. And if that's the case, we're in for a very interesting period. And this sense that inflation is a non-starter is what's driven this global bond market to rally again. Japan's 10-year yields are back at zero, the official 10-year yield target of the Bank of Japan. Take a look at this contrast between the euro currency and the size of the ECB balance sheet. The euro was last at 119.02, dollar index 92.74, Japanese yen 110.07, Swiss franc 0.9604. The pound was at 129.19, the Australian dollar 0.7930, Indian rupee 63.945, South Korean won 1122.75, Brazilian real 314.77, Egyptian pound 17.6410, South African rand 13.0238. Dollar index at 93.50 level, we're below that, remains the key. Euro dollar, that remains firm. We've had a stonking rally this year, but we've come off the levels above 120, but not too far. Gasoline surges as Storm Harvey closes major US fuel pipeline. Gasoline surged in New York, extending its longest rally since 2013 as an important conduit of fuel from the Gulf of Mexico to the US East Coast began to close due to the effects of Tropical Storm Harvey. Motor fuel prices climbed as much as 8% in New York, advancing for an 8th session. Take a look at this natural gas chart via triple leverage. Crude oil had a big day yesterday, up $2, up 2.76%, but still contained, in particular the US. I think the key resistance level is surely 47.50, and we remain below that. Gold last trading at 13.18. Emerging markets, India's GDP growth continues to decelerate. Year-on-year growth is at 5.7%, below estimates, and down from 9% in the first quarter of 2016. And Bloomberg View is saying Modi's biggest move is a total bust, eliminating 86% of the country's currency has had zero benefits. Burma might be heading towards a debt crisis with China, forcing it to hand over a majority stake in a port to Beijing. Myanmar might be heading towards a debt crisis following China's move, forcing Myanmar to hand over a majority stake in a deep-sea strategic port in the Bay of Bengal. And this took me back to the piece I wrote about China rising, and I was talking about Sri Lanka, and I said Sri Lanka gorged on Chinese debt and has had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditors. A similar scenario unfolding in Burma. Sub-Saharan Africa, France, Côte d'Ivoire, Emmanuel Macron met with Alassane Ouattara in a tete-a-tete yesterday. Reuters apparently had photographers in Kaya, South Sudan, when the freelance journalist Christopher Allen was killed. Jason Patinkin has written a piece, No Country for Civilians. This is about South Sudan. Brigadier General Moses Lukojo stood in the ruins of Lupo, a strategic hilltop village in South Sudan's lush southern Equatoria region. Less than 2 miles to the east, telephone poles poked over a green ridge, marking the outskirts of Kajo-Keji, the seat of the county of the same name, where rebels under Lukujo's command stared down government forces across a deserted marketplace, one of dozens of front lines in a grinding 3-year civil war that no one was winning. 1 million South Sudanese have flooded into Uganda, including 3/4 of Kajo-Keji's population, in what the UN has described as a campaign of ethnic cleansing. It is the largest sudden exodus in Africa since the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Veteran diplomat named Acting State Department Africa Chief Donald Yamamoto, who has extensive diplomatic experience in Africa, including 2 tours as a US ambassador, will take office as Acting Assistant Secretary of State for Africa on September 5. FAO statistics: migration is widespread in Africa. Many households where data are available have at least one member who's internally or externally migrated. Venice Film Festival review: Human Flow. Freetown's mudslides and the slippery slope of urban risk in Africa, basically saying that this risk applies across the continent, and if you've been across the continent like I have, I can't agree more. Our buildings are not solidly built, and in many places have been built in very, very dangerous places. I like this quote that Paul Wallace alerted me to from a Lebanese private equity group on how it does due diligence in Africa. Take a look. I like this photograph of Kampala at night in different lights. Opposition leader warns Zambia faces violence if talks with president fail. Let me assure you, today in Zambia, if you wore a UPND t-shirt, my party's t-shirt, you would be committing suicide because you can be killed for wearing that. Take a look at this video of the South African president losing his temper with Julius Malema. Julius Malema, in my opinion, is not to be underestimated, and the South African president's chuckle is equally noteworthy and at times a little sinister. South African all shares up 11.59% this year. Dollar Rand 13.02. Nigerian all share up 32.11% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange up 41.44% this year. Angola accounts for about 2/3 of China's oil imports from sub-Saharan Africa. The big news in Kenya: IEBC failed to conduct a free, fair and transparent election. The entire presidential election is therefore null and void, so said the Supreme Court. I disagree with this decision on a number of points. I don't think the threshold of proof was reached by the opposition. It was very difficult to argue, I think, that the entire process was so polluted as to so as to avoid the entire election. I think if you're avoiding the presidential election, you've got to avoid everything else. And unfortunately, this is the worst outcome, I think, for the economy. I was writing about the economy finding the off-ramp. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that. New York Books' Helen Epstein had an interesting piece called Kenya, the Election and the Cover-Up. She was saying shortly before departing Kenya, Kerry praised the Electoral Commission for having done an extraordinary job to ensure that Kenya has a free, fair and credible poll. He then urged the opposition to get over it and move on. Look, there was clearly plenty of malfeasance, but it did not, in my view, change the result. The election, and we're going back to it again, has the potential to produce quite a bifurcated economic outcome. We're back there again. Mina Kiai tweeted the Registrar's Scrutiny Report, what you need to know. Take a look and see if you feel it is substantial enough. Mina Kiai famously said, if you want to arrest me, I am here. Aidan Hartley has written two very interesting pieces in The Spectator. I'd prepared for the worst, but Kenya's election has me finally living in hope. Following Kenya's recently concluded elections, I took a walk on my Laikipia farm and lit up a cigar stale because I'd saved it for a day when I might hear a bit of good news that never seemed to come. I felt it was the end of a terrifying 5-year ordeal when I frequently sensed my life was in extreme danger. A few weeks before, at a rally on the plains near our farm boundary, our local MP, Matthew Limperkel, had allegedly declared, if we win this election, we will take this land, we will make sure all the Wazungus, the white people, go to their homes. Speech was recorded by witnesses and Matthew was arrested and charged with incitement. But my MP was no stranger to criminal cases. In March, he was arrested following the shooting of my friend and neighbour Tristan Forschboer, though charges were dropped for lack of evidence linking him to this cold-blooded murder. In another pending criminal case, he's accused of threatening to burn down my local police station if its commander did not release his cohorts from the cells. In yet another pending case, he is accused of assaulting Sarah Correre, his arch-rival for the Laikipia North parliamentary seat. He allegedly beat her up in a government office last November, after which he sent her an SMS threatening, "Withdraw this case, you prostitute, or you die, idiot." I've known Matthew since even before I bought my land 14 years ago. His people are the local cattle-keeping Samburu, but he was partly raised by an elderly Italian Catholic priest. He promoted himself as a militant Samburu during a bloody feud with the neighbouring Pokot tribe in which hundreds died. He seemed frequently to crash vehicles and he had a reputation for hard drinking. I sensed he loathed white people, but I always showed him respect because he was prominent in his community. Matthew had strong political ambitions, but funding election campaigns in Kenya is an expensive business. Before the 2013 national polls, his Italian patrons claimed that he had run down a Catholic charity set up to organize operations for small children suffering severe heart problems. In the years since I started building up my farm, life in Laikipia had always been very peaceful for us. The trouble kicked off the day Matthew won his election. For 3 nights running, extremely violent bandits hit the farm, rustling cattle, shots flew everywhere. A gunman emptied an entire clip of AK-47 bullets into my car from such close range that sparks from the muzzle bounced off the windscreen as I drove to help my neighbours who suffered cattle raids every night for a week. In these succeeding years, the violence escalated all around us. Hordes of Samburu armed with guns, spears, knobberies, a form of club, and swords pushed multitudes of cattle into ranches owned by white farmers, but also into the maize patches and pastures of poor smallholders from rival tribes. Matthew was always making headlines. In 2014, he was kicked off an Emirates flight, accused of drunkenly assaulting flight attendants and throwing glasses around while demanding to be served alcohol before takeoff. Dubbed a rogue passenger by the airline, he later complained, "I just wanted a Tusker." When he returned to the Catholic charity and started loading up computers and other property to take away, locals tried to lynch him. Early last year, Matthew, who has repeatedly denied the numerous offences of which people have accused him, came to visit me on my farm. Several men threw rocks at me while shouting, "Kill, kill." I used my left hand to fend off one missile, the injuries festered, and the doctors nearly had to amputate my fingers. I adore Kenya, where my family has been since the 1920s. But as I lay in hospital for a week, I wondered whether farming in Laikipia was worth the risk. Early last year, Matthew, who has repeatedly denied the numerous offences of which people have accused him, came to visit me on my farm. He's a short man with a falsetto voice and an otter-like sleekness. Clearly intelligent, but has this disturbing habit of grinning when a nasty subject comes up in conversation. I implored him to be a leader for all ethnic communities in Laikipia rather than just the disgruntled, unemployed Samburu youths who followed him around. Our constituency is beset with some ghastly social problems, child marriage, and clitoridectomy of young brides. All children should attend primary school by law in Kenya, but in Laikipia you see tiny boys herding cattle. I told Matthew I'd met men like him before in Rwanda in 1994, Hutu warlords driven by hatred for the Tutsis. The young militias they incited to kill others eventually turned on them and practically ate their leaders. Matthew blinked and played with his phone. A few months later he told my farm workers that he would break down my gates and fences. I survived another ambush with gunshots flying as I drove home one night. In late October, Kenya heated up for this year's elections. My Samburu neighbors came to tell me Matthew was inciting a mob of young Moran warriors to invade my farm. I refused to believe this claim because I was doing plenty of business with my Samburu neighbors. I bought £30,000 worth of cattle from them that year, and I was about to start giving them pasture for their cattle at the onset of the dry season. A few days after this, on 27th October, 300 warriors armed with bolt cutters smashed through our electric fences and poured 10,000 cattle into the farm. Within 10 minutes of the alarm sounding, I phoned Matthew and implored him to withdraw his supporters. He denied he was behind the invasion, jeered at me and said, "Bring the witnesses to testify in court," before cutting the line. Saying impunity brings any perpetrator to a point of no return. What the person has done wrong cannot be undone, because after each criminal act the stakes are raised ever higher. In order to survive, you must commit wrong after worse wrong. At press conferences, Matthew seemed to be always at Ryla's side. In the nights before Election Day on 8th August, I could not sleep a week. I felt the world was about to come to an end. A Samburu friend tells me Matthew began vomiting at the tallying centres. The votes being counted showed that he was about to be trounced by Sarah Korere, the woman he had allegedly beaten last November. Saying the people had rejected everything Matthew represents. For sure, Kenya has a long way to go and corruption remains a giant problem. But I'd been prepared for the worst under another 5 years of Matthew, and now feel on top of the world, or maybe not after that Supreme Court decision. Aidan Hartley has also written another piece, about why Kenya is special like no other African nation, which is worth reading. That's also on Rich Wrap-Ups. On that point, a few interviews and visits I've done up in that area, an interview with William Roberts, who runs the Sirikoi Lodge, born in Lake Baringo, a photograph of Hannah waiting in the waiting room, ready for takeoff, Lewa, a helicopter ride, a footage video to Mount Ololokwe for breakfast, and an interview with Ian Craig of Lewa Wildlife. Finally, two photographs, one of a male lion crossing from Laikipia, who crossed from Laikipia with his brothers, seen here in Samburu, another one of a leopard in the grass in Lewa. The Nairobi All Share is probably going to see more profit taking. It's up 26.86% year to date. ARM Cement reported first half earnings per share, negative 3 shillings and 30 cents. Revenue was down 19.832%. Loss before tax 1.379 billion versus a loss of 363 million last time. A no interim dividend, earnings per share negative 3 shillings and 30 cents versus negative 1 shilling and 10 cents last time. I think what they've done is they've received the money now from CDC is kitchen sinked these results, we should see a sharp recovery from here. Or a recovery. Home Africa first half earnings per share negative 22 cents. Revenue was up 70.158%. Loss for the period 130.266 million versus 97.018 million. EPS negative 0.22 versus negative 0.24. Current assets are less than current liabilities. Which means the total equity position is negative 313.08 million. The effect of the suppressed selling prices of the units sold off plan in our Mitini Scapes development within Migar, deferred revenue deposits from sales of plots grew from 2 billion to 2.2 billion. Book value of group sellable land or land bank grew to 3.1 billion. and they're saying the process of fundraising is underway. So far has progressed very well. NSE 20s up 26.39% so far this year. And I thank you for stopping by. I wish you a tremendous weekend.